Hello, I'm Brent Stafford, and this is Aftermath of Murder Survivor Stories, a multi-part video series produced in support of the National Victims of Crime Week. This series features exclusive interviews with ordinary people who have experienced an extraordinary event, the devastating loss of a loved one through murder. Aftermath of Murder goes behind the headlines as survivors share their stories about the loss, grief, trauma, and the hope for healing in the aftermath of murder. Joining us today is Donna Irwin. Her 55-year-old sister Lynn was brutally murdered by her fiancé, who is a former RCMP officer, while in their home in Penticton. Thanks for joining us today, Donna.
Thank you.
So please tell us what Lynn's last day was like.
Lynn's last day was in her home in Penticton, where she felt safe, living with her fiancé, who is a former RCMP officer. They had been out during the day. I think there was a lot of drinking. He was doing a lot of drinking that day, was really drunk. Later in the evening, she had phoned my sister Shelley and said that Keith was really drunk and was trying to pick a fight with her. And she didn't know what to do. She was very upset. And Shelley just said to her, you know, maybe sleep in the spare room. Don't talk to him when he's been drinking, and talk to him in the morning when he's sober. And Shelley said, I'll call you in the morning to make sure everything's okay.
And that call never happened.
And that call never happened. Shelley did call Lynn several times in the morning, but of course there was no answer.
So what did happen to her?
They apparently had a big fight that night. I think Lynn had maybe at one point had said that she was going to leave him. She had given him the engagement ring back that he had given her. And she had, I think, had planned to go sleep in the spare room because the beds were turned down in the spare room. She walked back into the master bedroom, I believe, to get her pajamas, and he was waiting there for her with a 9mm handgun. And as she walked in the bedroom door, he shot her in the face. And that's where her life ended that night, on the bedroom floor.
What happened next?
He actually made the call to 911, said that he shot his wife, was very calm through the whole call. The RCMP had gotten to the house to start the investigation.
He was an RCMP officer.
Yes.
That complicates things in a way, doesn't it?
It really complicated things. I mean, my first thought was, is there going to be a cover-up? Are these RCMP that are investigating my sister's murder, are they friends of his? The RCMP officers that we dealt with were amazing. They were just as upset about this whole situation and how it had happened, and I felt comfortable after talking to them about what they suspected had happened.
People in the police are supposed to protect, not hurt. That must be a bitter point for you.
He took an oath to serve and protect, and I think she would have felt safe that she was with him because he was an ex-RCMP. I don't know if she would have ever felt that her life would ever be in danger, but I think there was things leading up to it. I think she knew, maybe because he had such a temper and he was such a drinker, that maybe something like this would happen.
And when you look at the pictures of Lynn, she's such a vivacious woman.
She was always smiling, always happy. She was a nurse, she was a caregiver. I mean, she loved life, and she did love him. They were going to get married. They'd been together over 7 years.
So what happened the day of the funeral?
We had my sister's motorcycle there because that's one thing that she loved, and we had it there, and it was just, we just went through the motions. I mean, getting up and talking about her and trying to tell people what she was like and the loss that we were feeling. It was very, very emotional. People from all over, I mean, her friends from nursing, her nieces and nephews, her sisters, my mother, everybody was there. After the service was over, we were just a broken family. We didn't know, what do we do now? So we ended up going back to my niece's house, Brandy, and as we pulled at the front of her house, there's a gate, and we went into the front yard, and there was these 4 black garbage bags on the front lawn of Brandy's house. And we kind of looked at them and said, well, everybody's coming back here. Did somebody bring the garbage over, or is it in the front yard? And Brandy opened up a couple of the bags, and it was my sister's clothes.
How did they get there?
His brother flew out from Toronto and came into the house, and they just took all my sister's things out of the closets and they just threw them into garbage bags and just put them on the front lawn of my niece's house the day of the funeral. It was devastating. It was a slap in the face, and it was quite unbelievable that a family who my sister loved, how could they do this to her? Put her stuff in trash like that's all she was to them?
It's astonishing.
It was shocking. I mean, we just took the bags and put them in a spare room in my niece's house where they sat for a long time.
So fast forward to the trial. What happened?
My sister was murdered August 16th in 2011, and we just had the trial this August of 2013. To be thrown into the justice system and not really knowing what's going to happen or how you're going to be treated, the victim services people were amazing with us. They sat with us every day. They explained things to us that were going to happen, and so that we could understand the law a little bit and what was going to happen in court. We were there every day, sitting in the front row, sitting feet away from him. And he was just sitting there, smiling at our family, glaring sometimes, I felt like he was just trying to intimidate us. And then all the evidence started coming out about the actual murder of my sister. And he was claiming self-defense. Because when they found my sister's body, they found a knife in her hand. And when we heard that information, we were shocked and horrified, because my sister hated weapons, she hated knives, she hated guns, she was so against violence, and I could never see my sister ever having a knife in her hand, but that's what he was claiming. So sitting all through the trial, listening to the horrible details of how Lynn's last hours were, through the coroner, seeing pictures that we should never have seen, and all the evidence, it was really hard on our family to see my beautiful sister, and all was left of her was this crime scene of her laying in this pool of blood, and him trying to say that it was self-defense, that she came after him with a butcher knife, and he had no choice but to shoot her. Yet he had a 9mm handgun ready when she walked in that room, and I thought to myself through the whole trial, he was a trained police officer. If he was so fearful for his life, why didn't he shoot the ceiling? Why didn't he shoot her in the leg? Why didn't he close the door? He was 3 times the size of her. He could have locked himself in the bathroom. There was so many things that he could have done.
And yet, he shot her.
He shot her, and he shot her in the face within 24 inches. At the end of the trial, I mean, him sitting there and not showing any signs of remorse, he sat there every day chewing on ice cubes. You could hear him chewing on the ice cubes. And then we were shocked about, all of a sudden we came back from recess and we were told that he was going to take the stand, and we had no idea. He got up and told his story, and all the evidence proved otherwise, that the knife was placed in my sister's hand after she was murdered. He manipulated the scene. At one point when they were talking about the bullet in Lynn's face and how she had died, I got really emotional and started to cry, and I was trying really hard not to. And the judge let the jury go, and he just said, "You in the front row." And I just sort of looked around and I said, "Me?" And he goes, You need to remove yourself from the courtroom. I don't even know if I'm going to let you come back for the rest of the trial until you get your emotions under control."
That seems harsh.
I basically collapsed in the courtroom and had to be taken out by my sisters and friends.
He was eventually found guilty.
He was found guilty of second-degree murder.
Do you feel there's justice?
No, I don't think there's justice. He got life in prison. He can apply for parole in 13 years. He never showed any signs of remorse until the day the judge gave him his sentence.
I know it's only been a year. Over the last couple of days, there's still stuff coming out in the media.
The last 2 days, actually all this week, there's been articles that have been popping up all over the news, front page news again, because he's been appealing his conviction. He said it was too excessive. He thinks he was mistreated and that he didn't get justice.
How does this make you feel?
It makes me feel sick because I don't know why he gets so much media coverage. Nobody phones and asks us how we're doing or how do we feel about this, but he's always on the front page. So it's like you have a scab on a wound, and then every time something like this comes up, it sort of gets picked off a little bit, and you just start to bleed a little bit more again, and it doesn't go away. It's just there.
How do you remember Lynn?
She was a mother. She was a sister. She was a daughter. She was a nurse. She was a friend. She was a nana. She's missed horribly by all of us. And all we can do is get through it. We will never get over it. We are just trying to get through it as best we can.
If you or someone you know has experienced a loss through homicide, go to the BC Victims of Homicide website at bcvoh.com to find available resources and information on upcoming support groups. If you're interested in volunteering or to make a donation, visit the BC Bereavement Helpline website. This has been Aftermath of Murder Survivor Stories.